he's also come out and said we don't need cryptocurrency, we just need the digital US dollar, which is a massive statement by our good old friend Gary Gensler.
In what context? When did he say this? What
he said this on a podcast yesterday or 2 days ago now. So he's been going, I think it was on Squawk Box.
I was going to say, who invites Gensler to their podcast? I guess we would if we could, right?
Or why not? Even if you could get Gensler on your podcast for 10 minutes, even if we could interview like Elizabeth Warren for 10 minutes about cryptocurrency, we would. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, Tristan says, Aussie, what's poppin'? Pop, my G.
Let's go.
So let's start at the top. Robinhood in the most immediate. I mean, obviously, every talking head is going to be talking about this Gensler thing. And you were just on another show talking about something about this. But let's start with the stuff relevant to people, to retail people. Robinhood delists ADA from Cardano, Matic from Polygon, and Sol. What drove this? Why?
Basically, them being listed as securities by the SEC in the Coinbase and Binance cases.
Yeah.
So they did legal compliance review, and deemed that those three were considered either non-compliant or a greater risk for Robinhood. And so they were delisting them. The support for them is supposed to end at the end of the month, so June 27th. So
I mean, you have time to offboard some money there. Are you able to trade for now to get your cash?
Okay. Yeah, you're able to trade, and then basically at the end of the deadline, any ADA, Matic, or Solana that is still in your Robinhood crypto wallet will be sold for market value and be credited to your Robinhood account.
You know, I need to see if I actually even have any holdings in Robinhood anymore. Get me a list and make a few calls. All right. So we'll get Tristan a list. Okay, so let's give Tristan a list. Who we want? Gensler?
Warren. I'd love to talk to Warren. Loomis. Let's talk to Loomis.
And then, on the off chance, Mr. T. I mean, look, if you're we'll get Mr. T to tell us what he thinks. So let's talk about Robinhood though. Like, Robinhood's trying to stay off of the radar. Is the future for Robinhood to delist all crypto, except Bitcoin?
Potentially. I mean, they can keep ETH because ETH still hasn't actually been legally named a security in any of the current SEC filings. And so that's kind of important.
So, and you raise a great point, and we need to try to find a way to settle this dialogue. In what report, we deliberated on Twitter a little bit about this, like the Coinbase lawsuit, did not list its tokens as securities. It said the actions Coinbase was taking from the listing made Coinbase staking platform a security. Am I mistaken in that?
No, so that's one section. So everyone kept posting that section. Anyone who's a Bitcoin maxi was posting that section because it's the only section that mentions ETH.
Okay.
And they were like,
it's the only, let's capture that. It's the only section that mentions Ethereum, when it was just saying, hey, listen, your staking program, Ethereum and a few other diddly bops. And so all the maxis or all the talking heads were read the first paragraph and just
they read the first paragraph. They're like, oh my God, we can make a Bitcoin argument here. This is why you should only have Bitcoin. And so maxis were kind of jumping on that narrative.
Okay.
And we're saying, oh, look, ETH's a security, when really it's Coinbase offering the staking of ETH on their platform is a security.
Exactly. And that's what I read. But you're saying further into the lawsuit, it actually states clearly or implies?
Oh, no, ETH's not mentioned anywhere else in the lawsuit.
But you were alluding to other cryptos being called... Go ahead.
Securities. Yeah. So Polygon, Matic, ADA, Solana, those are all listed as potential unregistered securities that Coinbase was listing in other parts of the lawsuit.
So maybe what we need to do, because I'm sure that, as everyone has done their armchair homework on this, I'm sure they've heard this. Is there a way you don't happen to have up or accessible? And if you don't bother with it. We'll do it after the show. But the documentation or the sections that actually say, hey, you're fiddling or listing potentially unregistered securities. And these are potential unregistered securities. Does it say they are unregistered securities or potential unregistered securities?
I actually don't know if they say potential. I'm pretty sure they say unregistered securities.
Okay.
Because the whole argument that is being made
Yeah.
is that, and even actually Gary Gensler said this himself, that it doesn't matter if all of them are. He just needs one to stick.
Yeah.
As long as one of them is an unregistered security, he's got them. And so he'll list as many as he wants so that at least one of them sticks.
And I keep coming back to this, and aside from the crypto fanboy vitriol, what is the rational move here? Why? Because there's so many TradFi companies that have securities. I believe, okay, Tristan jumps in and says, I believe they specified 31 cryptos defining them as unregistered. And that is specific. Tristan, to your knowledge, is that in the Coinbase lawsuit or the Binance lawsuit? That would be good to know. And Aussie, if you know, and because I do want to talk about the difference between the two lawsuits, which are important. Jared says, seems like there's been a lot of doom and gloom on the crypto FUD frontier. Is this noise? And if so, what's the signal? Well, I mean, I could conjecture, and Aussie, I'd love to hear you on this. It is going to be a rocky future for alts and shitcoins. Like, that is a guaranteed signal out of this. A guaranteed signal is that if the U.S. government specifically cannot control it, and Tristan's got the link, bam, right there.
Yeah, I'm going through the SEC lawsuit to Coinbase as we speak. I've got some of it.
And so the signal, to Jared's point, the signal is what we care about because it points to our future, whether we're developers, whether we're just fanboys and fangirls of the metaverse like Allison. She's onboarding people all the time. Why has none of this touched? I guess some of this has touched the metaverse, right? Like most of this conversation is around alts or tokens. Why is there not a lot of interplay with metaverse tokens?
Well, I mean, there is. Mana, Axie Infinity, and Sand are all listed as unregistered securities in these lawsuits. So
really?
Yeah. So that they all are they're all mentioned. So it's not like they're unscathed. They aren't unscathed. It's just that everyone in the metaverse is too focused on the Apple Vision Pros to talk about the potential attack on the metaverse that's going on with these lawsuits. But I think the other argument is that there are potential metaverses that are existing without their own tokens that are building that. Essentially, the metaverse stands with crypto or without crypto. It doesn't really need crypto to keep going, and so that's important.
Web3 gaming. So let's abstract this for a second. Web3 gaming itself is crypto gaming, or better, blockchain gaming, and that's where there's a lot more in-game components, aka here NFTs, games, clothing, weapons, vehicles. Assets within that game that are just in-game relevant. And the hope is some interoperability. So the Web3 gaming, there is a lot of innovation. There's a huge future, and Alex Becker, we know, is a big fan of Web3 gaming. I am becoming a big fan of it, being an investor in these ecosystems. And maybe it's the Vision Pro, but the three you listed, Mana, Decentraland, Sandbox, and what was the other one?
Axie Infinity.
Now, Axie Infinity, is that a metaverse or just a gaming token?
It's a Web3 gaming, so it's not particularly metaverse, but
Yeah.
it's like it was the biggest and the first Web3
Yeah,
game
it
that
blew
had
up.
mass adoption.
And it got hacked, of course. We all know about that. We were all like in the fervor back then. So, but it still seems like when the news hits, we get bent out of shape I get bent out of shape. When I hear Robinhood delisting Cardano, what? Sol, I could see specifically because of how it's been handled in the VC world. I could actually see how Sol has been basically running bareback for a while, right? But Polygon, Matic, and ADA, I hear these and I get a little bent out of shape. I feel a little protective of both these cryptos. But when I hear the metaverse stuff, I don't really flinch. Does it seem to you like Gensler will ever turn his guns on the metaverse or gaming cryptos?
I think tokens, yes. I don't necessarily think that NFTs, like asset NFTs in games, potentially will be targeted, especially at AAA gaming level. So, like,
Yeah.
if we're talking about GTA 5 or GTA 6,
Yes,
and
that's a big one.
And how they are looking at integrating crypto,
Yeah.
I don't think that GTA 6 will be targeted because if the assets are really just meant to be held in game and they can be traded in game, then I think that might not really be on their radar, and it would be maybe harder to make the argument that you are selling an unregistered security, especially if you can't buy them in game. You can only earn them in game. And so that would be, or earn them by earning tokens in game, and then buy them with those tokens in game. So I think there's a certain argument that Web3 gaming is actually kind of a little bit safer because there are other utility aspects and gaming aspects and technical aspects to those cryptocurrencies, rather than, especially if you think about Solana or even Matic, there was VC. There was more direct investment to buy those tokens with the expectations of a profit.
Well, and you're landing exactly on the point. And I have this up, and maybe we'll get to it down in a moment because I want to get to Jarrett and Tristan's comments here real quick because I think they're value added here. And Tristan, I was reading over the link you sent, folks. If you're watching this now or later, look in the comments. You'll see this URL, which actually has the complaint filed. This one is against Binance, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But Jared jumps in, and I want to get back to what you just said. The promise of profits or returns, I think, is critical. Jared says, I actually think that the metaverse does need an underlying value layer, and that seems to be crypto. No, it's likely not fiat due to the billions of people who are unbanked. I actually think the metaverse does need, that word need, an underlying value layer. I think games, well, you're talking about the metaverse, and I want to be clear about this. So I'm going to answer this from the gaming perspective. First and foremost, the utility of gaming is fun. And so then we look at the metaverse, and we have to ask ourselves, what differentiates the metaverse from a game? The metaverse is built up from gaming technology, but it's a massive multiplayer, open world game effectively. And I don't think the word need is necessary. I think they look and say, well, no, this is the upgrade. This adding value is the thing. Adding value exchange is the differentiator and why we're going to call this the metaverse. And it's not just a game. The fact that Snoop would take any of his time to live in Decentraland and play shows is because there's a value exchange. Maybe it's hard value, like currencies, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's entertainment or an extension of like three-dimensional fun, aka entertainment. But how do we know what any of this has value for? and that is crypto. But I think in the context of Gensler and the SEC, it's not about the in-game monetization, looting, as it were. Or if you go to a Snoop concert and you buy that memorabilia NFT that your character wears, and then Snoop gets like buying merch at a Lollapalooza concert or something, right? I don't think the conversation has anything to do with the in-game crypto, but maybe what Jarrett is getting at is maybe the metaverse requires an architectural value layer, which is what we call sand or mana, which is used in game, but it's actually used as compensation extra game outside of the game. And that is the SEC's concern, I think, is what you're getting at, right, Aussie?
Exactly. So I think you could, the metaverse could use the US CBDC or potentially even USDC or USDT. We can have a whole debate on whether the next front of attack for the SEC is stablecoins.
It
They've
will
already
be.
gone after
Guaranteed.
BUSD. They've already gone after BUSD, and they, in the Binance case, they already they listed BUSD as a security. So whether they're going,
And that's circles, right?
no, BUSD, so
BUSD. I'm sorry, got it.
BUSD. So whether they go after USDC and USDT,
It's a matter
that
of time.
that it seems like the logical next step.
Yeah.
And if we're making the argument for kind of the US CBDC, and that is a big accusation that's going around in the space, is that Gary Gensler is doing all of these accusations essentially to set forth the path for the US CBDC this summer, then stablecoins are probably going to be the next target, and therefore that underlying value layer that you're talking about will have to be this US CBDC, because otherwise he will call it a security. And it's why sand is being accused as a security, because you can also buy and sell sand with an expectation of a profit.
Interesting. Well, and it's one thing for you to be able to buy and sell with an expectation of a profit. It's another if the entity alludes to your ability to make a profit. And which is honestly super. Is there anything wrong with that? I mean, I could. Is it a security if I buy a Jeep Wrangler on Facebook Marketplace and I put it back on the marketplace and I say, hey, listen, you could flip this for a profit? Do I need to register as a security? Is that what we're getting at?
That is a great point, because it was the full-on debate that a bunch of lawyers were having on Mario Nawal's Twitter space, because someone said that USDC was a security. I forget who it was, but someone on the space literally said it was a security. USDC was a security. It might have been Rand Newman, actually.
Interesting.
Because when USDC depegged, he bought USDC knowing that it was backed at 80 cents and then sold it at $1, because he knew he technically bought it with the assumption that there was going to be profit. So this was really interesting, and it's a debate that I think the legal community doesn't agree on, because there are a whole bunch of activities that we conduct as regular citizens that one would say are done with the intent to make a profit. Certain, like collecting cards, art, flipping cars, flipping furniture. Those are all selling for the expectation of a profit, or could be.
Well, and Tristan's laughing like that's ridiculous. What Grant just described as an exchange of goods, right? Well, let's be clear. In since we're talking legalities, we're speculating on the letter of the law, and what this means is no. If I use and I put this in a phrase right here, if I use this particular set of phraseology to make my sale. It's not the fact that I go flip something, an exchange of goods. It's a fact that when I sell someone and I allude to the promise of profit, this is the finer point. That is the possible moment that it becomes a security. But to your point, Aussie, like there's a service out there, a good buddy of mine. He was in my investment club when we bought Wonderland. We're all still in that investment together as we're getting drips. But he is in another thing kind of like this for art called Masterworks. And Masterworks, if you're familiar with, for those who don't know, you can be a fractional owner of very real Picassos, very real Matisse, like very real masterworks of art. And of course, they're saying invest in this because our hope is that we build a portfolio and you, guess what? Make a profit. Not financial advice, they always say, of course. Why is it that these are under the gun when you and I know we could go to not financial advice all over their Twitter, all over Binance's terms and conditions? How is the SEC getting away with this so blatantly when we know that there are disclaimers at every turn? Like, what is that coming from? Do you have any sense?
I don't know. I think just because we say not financial advice, I mean, when we say not financial advice on this show,
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're not giving financial advice. It could be
Yeah.
the argument.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
probably true. That's probably true. Jared jumps in and says, it feels like ETH and BTC may be the only two to stand over time. Well, let's start with not financial advice. But I know that the way I am stacking my bags is for Ethereum and Bitcoin far more aggressively after this last week going forward. And if you're in the Not Crypto Bros, or if you've been a patron of my own, I put my portfolio mix just so that you could follow along. Tristan says, yes, it does, Aussie. Hold on, let me go back here. Tristan, which statement are you referring to? Yes, it does. The power is in the disclaimers. Oh, he's saying that it should protect us to say, not financial advice. Go make your own stinking decisions. Then what does he say? Then every U.S. product-based business is selling unregistered securities. Is this true?
I would disagree, because if you're selling me a cupcake,
Yeah.
I'm not buying that cupcake because I'm
You could get a
expecting to
return on
make a
investment.
profit.
No, because I'm about to eat this thing.
Yeah, I'm hungry and I want a cupcake.
Yeah, man. Okay, where did we leave off here? So, Tristan jokes, let's build a metaverse central bank. Jarrett Carpenter, I don't know why you didn't tag me in it, because I'd be DTF more than Jarrett would, I think. I think
Jarrett doesn't want a central bank.
He doesn't. But I do, Tristan, and I'm actually getting close to relaunching my training company, but the roadmap for that will be the first metaverse, acknowledged metaverse non-location nation. And we looked at the Montevideo, what was it? The 1933 Montevideo Convention actually outlined, and a lot of micronations are trying this experiment in real life. I think we need to apply this to the metaverse and actually build our country. Not citizenship advice. I'll plug that. I'll plug that there. New trend. Here we go. New trend is now cupcake flipping 100%. So then let's talk about, we talked about Robinhood. We touched on the Coinbase and Binance lawsuits. Are you seeing, like, what is the difference between, let's chat offline, my guy. Yes, Tristan, let's do that. I'll call you after the show. Are you seeing a difference between the Binance and the Coinbase lawsuits? What's
Massive.
The major difference?
Binance is accused of fraud and of commingling of funds.
Pause. Time it. Let's just take a pregnant pause there. Binance is being accused of fraud and what with funds?
Commingling of funds. So mixing CZ's personal accounts with user funds, and Binance monies with customer funds.
Oh God.
That's a huge accusation.
Yeah, but it's not hard to imagine, right?
It's not hard to imagine. But it's also not proven in court.
Well, and more importantly, I don't believe it's evidence of malfeasance, not in the crypto space.
It's one of those things where you've got such huge wallets and you're trying to manage all of these wallets that there could be mistakes made where you accidentally funds accidentally get commingled.
Yeah.
You could have, especially if you're thinking early on in Binance's days, it could simply be they didn't have all the systems properly in place to avoid some of the commingling that they were thinking of. Like CZ could have money on Binance that he's using, that he's holding to buy cryptocurrencies,
Yeah.
and technically that is a customer account,
Yeah.
and it then gets commingled with other customer accounts like they do all of our money,
Yeah.
just like the banks do.
Well, and this is what bugs the shit out of me is I think about, like, let's pick Bank of America or Wells Fargo, and they're doing financial management services, and Susie Q millionaire's got $1 million, John Q millionaire's got $1 million, and then how many ledger based systems in TradFi, and I don't mean blockchain ledger, I just mean banking ledgers, do they have that earmarked? And it's just literally a 0 and a 1. And they know they can borrow against that money for $2 million. So now they've got $2 million they can borrow against, or some fraction of $2 million. And that money ends up in an account, and then they trade that account. And does the money actually move? Well, maybe in traditional finance, and I wish we had a traditional finance technical person on the show, because I do want to talk about the legal nuance. Is it a borrowing mechanism in TradFi and an actual mechanism in DeFi? Meaning, in the example I just gave in TradFi, there is the federal funds lending. And so they can lend against deposits or borrow against deposits. They borrow from their own deposits to themselves. Then they go get a spread. They go either lend the money out in terms of mortgages, or they go invest it in terms of some other stock. They get the spread, and then they can reliquidate that. But in essence, we technically haven't touched user funds, right? And so then in DeFi, why don't we like to prevent any of this? Well, is this provable? Like, to me, in crypto, this isn't even a provable argument from the SEC, right? Because we have ledgers, but we have transparency of ledgers, but CZ, let's say CZ started an account 10 years ago, and it was personal, but it just got absorbed into the Binance world, and they just use it as a master trading account. But I guess in this example, do you think there are the lending mechanisms like I described in TradFi available to DeFi that, well, we wouldn't need to touch consumer funds? So is this... Go ahead.
Be hard to make the argument. Like I think it's hard to get that kind of liquidity, because there isn't the central bank system where they can borrow, or basically borrow against their deposits from the central bank. So yeah, I think that's a tricky kind of situation, and that's why you might see commingling of funds, or funds kind of getting a little bit confused. But
and so the crime is not even that malfeasance occurred. The crime is you're holding user funds, and I don't care if you did good with it. You put them in the same account. That's the violation.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably not hard to prove. And especially because of transparency of ledgers, especially because pseudo accounts are literally pseudo accounts. Like, and for those who don't know, like, the big argument has always been, no, put your stuff in cold storage, put your stuff on chain, because when you buy it from Binance or you buy it from Coinbase, it's literally just a line item. You go in there and say ADA, and there's these all complex mechanisms that say, oh, Grant just bought some Cardano, and it's worth this, and it is mine, and it is earmarked as mine, and it shows up in my account, and I might even be able to transfer it from my Cardano account here to a Yoroi wallet, which is on chain, or something like that for Cardano. But it's a very complex mechanism. They actually have to go sell BTC or Ethereum for that. It has to, or USDT.
No. They'll hold. They will often be holding the ADA. They'll hold the ADA,
but it's not mine.
It's not yours. It's in a big pool of 700,000 potential ADA or whatever held on chain in a Binance wallet. It's not a here's Grant's wallet with 30 ADA that's on Binance. No, it's here's a 700,000 ADA wallet held by Binance that, 5% is Susie B, 10% is Grant's, 3% is so-and-so's. And
interesting.
That's how it's broken up.
If anything, SEC is forcing us how we're doing bookkeeping in DeFi.
In some ways, that is part of the argument. I mean, they're accusing of fraud, so they're accusing, like, Binance is using customer funds to like pay payroll. So
Oh,
they're making larger accusations against Binance of like criminal activity. One of CZ's lawyers is the one of the best criminal lawyers in the world.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's like the charges against Binance are greater. And
yeah,
the other thing that they're doing with Binance, they aren't doing with Coinbase, is that they were asking for an emergency injunction to freeze the accounts on Binance.us. So originally the fear was they're freezing all customer funds. So essentially, as like FTX when they went bankrupt, or
yeah,
Celsius or anything like that. Last night, word came out that they just want to freeze basically big Binance, like the Binance accounts, so the company accounts,
yes,
CZ accounts, and any other basically Binance employee account
yeah,
on Binance.us,
yeah,
and not freeze customer accounts. So
yeah.
that's a recent kind of information leak, whereas previously the understanding and the wording of the injunction suggested freezing all accounts on Binance.us.
Well, on the
And
back of
they're
this, CZ has then said they're freezing USD trading pairs, right? So, I mean, so those are going to be delisted very momentarily. They are eliminating all USD transactions. And so they're covering their butt here in a big way. That's not retroactive. That's forward looking, obviously. And so, like, if you really want to be down to clown, you're going to VPN and have to do it in some other currency. And is this its own microcosm of the de-dollarization? Because if isn't this what the SEC wants? We just don't want you doing this with citizen funds of the United States, but also U.S. dollars, right? Like, is this an arm of de-dollarization, like self-imposed by the United States?
It could. I think it could. It isn't yet.
Interesting.
So it could be if they go so hard against stablecoins and USD trading pairs,
Yeah.
or or USD trading pairs, that essentially crypto has to come up with their own stable coin that is not pegged to the US dollar.
And everyone we know of is,
Yeah,
right?
at the moment, most trading pairs with the most volume are traded in US based stablecoin trading pairs, most often USDT.
But are there stable coins that are pegged to any other national currency?
There is an ag euro. It's got
Interesting.
100th of the volume,
Sure.
if 100th of the volume of USDT,
Gotcha.
or any US based one. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that I've heard that there's a couple of others, but they're so tiny that
Mm-hmm.
it's not even comparable. If you it's like a talking about being a billionaire and having a dollar kind of
Sure.
thing. Uh,
Patrick here asks, apart from Ethereum, which other alt, in your opinion, do you think has potentials? And he, of course, says not financial advice. So, Aussie, I'll give you a second. So, Patrick, what I am doing, meaning not what I suggest anyone else do, and we're going to be covering our butts, right? I don't suggest anyone else do this, but what I'm doing is my top three holdings are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Polygon Matic. A lot of people, or a handful of maxis, Ethereum maxis, believe Polygon might even itself go away. It's just been listed as a security. Ethereum still has not. It is often viewed as a layer 2 to Ethereum, and it does serve that purpose. But I happen to also know Polygon itself is its own layer 0. It's its own layer 1. Its contracts in the commercial space with Starbucks Odyssey, Adidas. We could go on and on about not Nike. Yeah, Nike was launched on Polygon, right?
yep.
The swoosh. The contracts are second to none. That doesn't mean they'll have those contracts next year. But to me, it says they know how to play ball. And so I love Polygon, but I therefore would not consider Polygon an alt. I still think Cardano, and I am investing. This is what I am doing, not what I'm advising. I still think Cardano for the zero knowledge proof identity as a token. Do I think its token has a strong future? I don't know. It's been hovering sub 40 for so long, but I am a big fan of Cardano. And I think if in the next bull run myself, how I'm investing in the next bull run, I'm predicting at least a 5x because in the previous bull run, it did a 10. So if I'm mitigating my expectations, I think it's there. Others that I'm watching are the ISO 20022 tokens minus IOTA. I really do not believe in the future of IOTA. They have no vision. They had the original vision, but they have not delivered nearly anything. But XDC, Quant, Stellar, who else is in the ISO? XDC, Quant, Stellar. There's like three others that I can't think off the top of my head, but if you look up ISO 20022, these are the Swift banking tokens. And, Ripple. Ripple. I think Ripple has a very strong future. I think it's going to come out singing on the SEC lawsuit. It's going to look like a hero that stood against Goliath, but little do we know, it's also partnered very well with regulators. It's worked. And I believe of all the tokens, Ripple stands the most likely to actually IPO in the TradFi space. And I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying that's financial advice. I'm saying that's what I'm banking on. Aussie, any input?
So Jarrett just asked, does this change our DCA plans? With the news,
Great question.
I am. I mean, my investments into alts have been actually pretty marginal for a while. I have mainly been doing Bitcoin and ETH, with 99% of my portfolio or 95% of my portfolio for the last while. But I would say the news has changed some of
Really?
my, yeah. I mean, especially both the news and the discussions that are being held regarding the new crypto legislation before
Yes.
Congress.
Yes.
I am being a lot more wary of investing heavily into Matic. I am a huge fan of Matic. Matic has been something that I've been tooting the horn of for quite a while. But Matic, because they've been named, because they do have Matic Labs, they Polygon Labs, and there's a chance that more than 20% of the supply is being controlled by one organization or entity.
And you're describing the Howey test.
The Howey test and the standards that are being set forth within new crypto legislation, there's a chance that they are considered security. And I think that has a major impact on people's access to it, and
People's
B,
access to it. Got it.
because if it's a security, you've got to be a securities broker, and therefore anyone in the U.S. that's not a qualified investor might not necessarily have access to Matic, or at least diminished access to Matic. And so I think ADA is the same thing. They were named, and maybe they don't have an entity that necessarily controls more than 20% of the supply, which I know you've made the argument for. There isn't an entity that controls more than 10% of the supply, I think you said. But that they do still have a guiding organization. They might not necessarily be technically the Cardano Foundation or the Cardano whatever. There is a guiding team that is helping lead development at Cardano. And so it's not truly decentralized. And so essentially all of these other cryptos are kind of teetering that line too much. I'm watching Avalanche and I'm watching Dot because they are the two layer ones that have not been named in lawsuits up until this point.
Really?
They're the only two that haven't been named. And so because I do not have enough, I don't have a lot of exposure to them, I'm adding a bit of exposure to those two layer ones just because I think, well, AVAX has been doing really good with Web3 gaming, and there's talks of partnership. There's been announcements of partnerships with
Web3 gaming
Amazon's.
with AVAX. Can you name a project?
There's been, God, is it Big Time? I think Big Time is launching with them. There's a few games that are using AVAX. Um, I'm not super well versed on Web3 gaming, but everyone that I know that is into Web3 gaming is talking about AVAX right now.
Really? See, and I'm telling you, I think that as Amazon hunts for its solutions, I said this in another show, AVAX does stand the best chance, in my opinion, of being bought up by a major player.
Well, they're already a partner with Amazon.
I didn't know
AVAX and
this.
Amazon are already partners.
I didn't know
So
this.
that's pretty major. And so I think AVAX and then Dot has kind of like they've been really under the radar, and we've had someone comment on the previous show that they've actually had a really large Asian market, and so I'm hedging my bets against the fact that Solana, Matic, and ADA and all of these other layer ones become securities and disappear. And so I'm hedging. I've got positions in most of those. So I'm hedging my positions a little bit to, hey, what if these do disappear? What if they do become securities? And so I am hedging my position and DCAing and increasing my exposure to some of these other layer ones that I was kind of giving up on previously.
Yeah.
Because they seemed dead, in my opinion. And so I'm kind of hedging my bets a little bit now based off of the most recent news and discussions in Congress.
Jared, I think this might impact my DCAs, my dollar, for those watching later, the dollar cost averaging approach, which I think at this point, nearly all three crypto bros do dollar cost averaging for their preferred tokens. I'm spread a little bit wider than Jarrett. Aussie is beginning to build his bag now. And for those who don't know, I'm also in real estate and other things. So how does this impact my DCA plans? You just heard Aussie's take. I don't think it's going to change mine much. Not yet. We do have to watch what this means because, as you said, Aussie, if Gensler has made the statement, I don't need all of these to stick. I just need one of them to stick. And to me, that's a very irresponsible approach for someone impacting world leadership. Basically saying, I don't know. I'm throwing shit on a wall to stick, and it's like, okay, well then obviously the law is not your motive. If the law was your motive, you'd point to the law. And I wanted to point this out. So Tristan just a moment ago shared a link to the Binance complaint. And you shared a page with me, Aussie, of the listed securities. And I jumped to the section on Cardano because I love Cardano. And it basically is doing definitions of these chains. And it did a definition of Cardano. I won't go into it. It talks about the three major entities around Cardano. Cardano, Input, Output, Hong Kong, and Emergo. And then it defines what they are, does not define their holdings. And as we've said before, no one single, I think the largest single whale on a Cardano, we could verify this just by looking at the snow scan or whatever is the Cardano, no, that's Avalanche. The Cardano scanner explorer. But this is the accusation. On page 94, line or part 383, it says this. In public statements on Twitter and other social media, as well as their respective websites, these organizations, including Binance Platform, have said and alluded to an announcement by Input Output Hong Kong in or around September 2021 about the creation of smart contracts on the protocol. That's just an announcement. But the announcement then went on to say, supposedly, this paves the way for additional demand for the blockchain. Now, that statement promises no returns. That statement promises no profits. But the SEC is saying we don't have to make that argument. We can show intent that you are trying to tantalize future growth in general by alluding to
Well,
future demand. Go ahead.
there's that, and then it's an announcement by a centralized organization of an upgrade. So
Correct.
those are two kind of definitions right there
Yeah.
that if you look at the current legislation in front of Congress regarding cryptocurrencies would qualify it as not decentralized enough and being valid as a security because you're not necessarily promising profit, but you're alluding to profit, and therefore you've got kind of two ticks against them, which would put
Yeah.
them in the security column.
So then, so you in this final point here is you're talking about the degree of decentralization, which is profound. But let's talk about, because the fear of centralization is you make an announcement about an upgrade to the nodes or to the chain, and you're market making. And in market making, you have the potential for malfeasance. It's not as advertised, so to speak. But if we're talking about market makers that are not as advertised, we can't help but leave off this episode talking about Gary Gensler's bet against Bitcoin and his puts. So, how much merit is there to this rumor and accusation? Wait, hold on. Jared says, shout out to Aussie for diving deep into the layers of U.S. securities and exchange bureaucracy and doublespeak. He should get a free U.S. citizenship based solely off this episode, says Jarrett from a high rise in Santa Marta, I believe. Hello, Jarrett. You're living the life we all wish we were this afternoon. But talk to me about this accusation that Gary has put options against Bitcoin in his market making. Talk to me about this.
So this came out from WSB Capo on Twitter in the last 12 hours, accusing essentially Gary Gensler of putting $2.5 million worth of shorts on Bitcoin 48 hours before he charged Binance and Coinbase. And the accusation is that Coinbase has evidence of this. This would be wildly major accusations and findings if it were true.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if it's true. I think this is absolutely a hard case to prove unless Coinbase straight out comes out and says it.
Now
He
is
did it on Coinbase. He put shorts on Coinbase,
yeah.
and we've got evidence that it's him.
Now for those who don't know what we're talking about, this is coming from Capo WSB. Now, for those who don't know the meme land, WSB is Wall Street Bets, right? Wall Street Bets is kind of the acronym that has been going around since the GameStop rally or protest or whatever you want to call. It was like a meme investment event, and some people made a lot of money. Some people lost a lot of money. It was originally a Reddit board, and that Reddit board went to town. This thing even sat in front of Congress. I think the guy with the kitties, he went to Congress about this. So I don't know what affiliation this person has, but they are somehow, at least psychologically, connected to market making, there was a huge market making event. It was legal, and no one was prosecuted from the Wall Street Bets GameStop fiasco, and then it went on to touch AMC stocks and Johnson & Johnson stocks. But this person also happens to have 90,000 followers. Now, is that a sign of credibility? Not necessarily. It's a sign that they know how to move the market. And then this is this tweet. And you just flipping through some of the comments, everyone asking for citations, references, verify or not verify. Elon does need to step in, and people need to be able to vote on additional context if you've ever seen those things like verified or not verified, bro. How likely is this? Even though this is a meme, do you believe this?
I feel like, given how bold he's been, there's a mild inkling to myself that says, yeah, he's bold enough to try to do this. He's made a lot of comments that are like, he's pretty darn arrogant and bold. He could have done that.
Is this
But
a vengeance for not getting hired by Binance?
I mean, that's the insinuation that everyone in crypto Twitter is making.
Really? What year was
That
this?
2019 is that
That recent?
yeah, it's within the last 4 years. Before he was appointed CFTC, he was appointed SEC
Yeah.
chairman because he was previously CFTC chairman or a
Yes. Oh,
commissioner
wow.
there. So um, essentially, the insinuation is that he's doing this as a vengeance. He previously taught blockchain and money at MIT in the fall of 2018.
What
And
was the
that
context? Did you flip through any of that? What was his tone and context on blockchain at the time?
he was at least very bullish on Algorand at the time. So
Really?
there are some clips of him teaching this class and preaching about Algorand, who he is now accused of being a security. So that's kind of big. And so the accusation is that essentially he got turned down for this job. He got approached by the presidential he got approached by the president to go work at the SEC, and he in June 2021 and essentially saw this as a way of getting back at Binance and crypto for basically doing him dirty.
So let's, we're almost getting to the top of the hour here. What, in your opinion, not from a financial investment perspective, but from a protect what's yours perspective, what actions do those active in the space? I'm not only talking about traders and investors. I'm talking about people that might be passionate about NFTs. I'm talking about people that might, like Allison or Brian Naughton, might be into just metaverse stuff. Is there an exchange we should be moving our money to? Should everyone really understand the ins and outs of cold wallet storage, which is a mind-numbing process? Like, what do you think people should be doing at this point?
I mean, cold wallet storage or at least hot wallet storage, off exchange storage is probably your most important piece right now. Just because we don't know if Binance US gets an injunction order that actually forces him to freeze customer funds. I think Coinbase hasn't had that accusation or had that request in the lawsuit against them. So, but you don't know when that ever could happen. There's disagreement on whether the US could touch Binance.com. So if I know a lot of international users use Binance.com, and so
just with a VPN.
Yeah, just with a VPN. And so if they do go after Binance.com and ask for freezing of assets there, you could get yourself into trouble. And there's an argument that they could go after OKX, they could go after any of these other exchanges who've essentially allowed or encouraged US user usage with VPNs and non-KYC. So I would say getting off exchange is probably your biggest security blanket in this current market.
Yeah, I think, if Jarrett were here, he kind of probably ask us this direction. I'm not worried. I think it's a lot of drama. I think that this is though this is the clunkier version, the unnecessary version, this is the regulation people have been asking for. And if they read between the lines, there is a lot of noise and signal, and this phrase we've used so often, I'm almost sick of it. What's the signal amongst the noise? But it's apropos, so let's use it. I think the signal is play by the rules. There's still plenty of money to be made to be playing by the rules. Now, touching decentralization, touching the philosophies of crypto, I think so many degens have intermingled things like SEC regulation. We're asking for regulation. Coinbase. I mean, people forget. Gensler advised Coinbase when they went public. They showed them what they were doing.
It wasn't him. He wasn't the SEC chair at the time. It
Who
was a
was?
different SEC chair. Let me find his name. Because when they went public in 2019, it was Clayton at the time.
Okay, I misspoke. I misspoken then. So, but they did consult with the SEC.
Exactly.
And now they're saying you're basically doing regulation by enforcement. And I don't believe a civil society should do regulation by enforcement. However, it is regulation. And these rules are, I think, painfully so, but they are becoming evident. You can't apparently, as ridiculous as it is, but it is their stance. You can't say we're adding this upgrade, so you should see user growth. Okay, you can't be a large shareholder or a whale and contribute to the network so long as it's a token. And so the signal amongst the noises is, hey, tone down your degen shit. That's pretty much it. Go ahead.
I don't necessarily say that some of the stuff that they're talking about is like, hey, you could see user growth from this. That's not. I would not say that's degen shit. I don't think that's degen. All these Google.
I don't either, but in their remember, regulation is someone defining the terms and the rest of the world agreeing or disagreeing.
And so it's disclaimers. It's more about disclaimers, which we have with public companies, than being degens. And so I think that's an important kind of statement. It's more about disclaimers and not necessarily always all of the statements that are being made. I don't. I agree, Jared. I'm not worried in terms of the future of crypto. I think this is totally noise amongst the signal, because we are seeing regulation being formed by Congress on cryptocurrencies, and so I'm not worried about this noise. But I think there are important things that are being made and said during this time frame that are not noise. They're a direction towards the signal and of what's going on. And so actually my strategy of how I'm buying my cryptocurrency and how I'm DCing my Bitcoin and ETH has changed completely in the last month and a half, because Canadian regulations essentially have outlawed stablecoins. And so Binance.com is closing in Canada, and other exchanges are leaving Canada because of this.
Okay.
And so now, instead of buying my cryptocurrency, buying stablecoins through peer-to-peer exchange in Canada and then buying on Binance.com, I'm going the legal route. I'm sending money from my bank account to my, it's essentially just a Canadian version of Robinhood, Wealthsimple, which is a registered cryptocurrency exchange within Canada, and buying my Bitcoin and ETH with Canadian dollars.
And this is ever my question, and we don't have time to cover it now. This is ever my question. Polygon, for example, let me take Polygon because I just really believe in its future, or Cardano, really believe in its future. Why not centralize and register and play the game?
Because, and this is something I literally just said on Crypto News Consensus, that there is one single company in the US that has done that. They legally IPO'd, but nobody can actually legally trade their IPO'd stock, because there is their IPO token, because there is no legal framework to allow a digital asset exchange.
So peer-to-peer, like this place IPOs legitimately, like a Coinbase. Just for example, it's not Coinbase, but just for example, and it's the COIN coin, or token or stock.
So it's token. So there's an important. You can IPO token. They made the IPO when they went through all the rules. They made an IPO rule. When there was the whole IPO hype in cryptocurrency, there's one company that legally did it, and They legally
They IPO'd the
decentralized.
token.
They IPO'd the token.
But
And
the point is we can't, like, I literally, if I had a share of Coinbase stock, I can give it to you, but we cannot value exchange it. And then this is the example of, well, we might be able to do that with stocks, but how do we do that with tokens? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, there's no one that can legally facilitate the
Wow.
exchange of those.
That's
That's
nuts.
the important thing, because you can actually value exchange. Like if you held Coinbase when it was still private, you could, me and you could legally make that trade. We could buy and sell your private Coinbase equity
Yes.
legally at different valuations, whatever
Yes.
valuation we wanted to. We
Yeah.
could do that legally. But for this particular token that IPO'd, they're not allowed to do that.
Man.
And so this was a major revelation that I didn't even understand fully at the time. I always understood you can't legally do it. It just
Yeah.
like, and so there was the CEO or the guy who helped the lead that initiative, and there was one of his lawyers who helped, like who does private equity exchange.
See, we need to break that down because this is the stuff that I think will affect people. Because like Ripple will IPO, how will that affect us? You know, I appreciate you saying that. And what was the name of that company?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
For those watching, we'll try to get this and put this in the comments. Let's try to do that because I think it will be interesting case study to watch unfold. Real quick, George Pate finally wakes up from his afternoon nap and says, do you see sovereign states and areas beginning to appear? If the U.S. bans Binance, does that make it illegal in D.C. and other sovereign areas? I think of indigenous reservation land and whatnot like that. Like, will Binance.com be available there? I don't know, but it is worth asking because they are sovereign lands. That is a fantastic question, but the USD is still at risk. If you're in Japan, doesn't matter. I still think the USD is going to continue to be the problem, and your citizenship yourself. So if I'm an American, but I'm in Germany, how will this affect me? I think these things matter. Do you consider Pepe some degen shit, bro? It doesn't get more degen, bro.
Yeah.
And then he does make this point, which is very interesting, which I wish we had time to go into, but we don't. Why keep onboarding like you do if Binance allows cloud mining now? You no longer have to.
I'd love to cloud mine. George, teach me how to cloud mine, and I'll cloud mine.
As soon as the SEC made their decision, Binance announced they now offer cloud mining. That is worth looking into, George. We've got to have you on the show because not only do I want to talk about the how-tos, and Not Crypto Bros really should bring you some of these how-tos, including the Pi Bitcoin mining. Note to you and Jarrett, we still want to do that. The Raspberry Pi mining. But also the legal frameworks of how this gets around some how this gets around some of this. I got you, boo. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Aussie shout-outs today, bro.
I'm going to shout out Jarrett because even though he's out at the beach having a great day in the sun, he's still here hitting us up in the comments, telling us not to worry. It's all noise.
It's don't pay attention to the noise. Look for the signal, and the signal is that Jarrett is living his best life as a remote worker, working for crypto philanthropy, but in Bogota, currently in Santa Marta, I believe, with a bunch of friends having a good old time, and still checking in with Not Crypto Bros. And my shout out is to everyone who's not hiding their head in the sand right now. A lot of you could just hide your head in the sand, not touch your crypto, sit, see what's going on, ignore the feeds, ignore whatever. And though I do believe you should be ignoring shitcoin season, I do believe you should be ignoring a lot of the BS crypto Twitter. I think this is a huge education moment on how money works and how the government will always put its hand in things. So shout out for you guys who are keeping your head up, and you, Aussie, for doing, like, you just came from another show and you did this show. So props to you, bro. Well, everyone, I got a hard stop. Thank you so much. Catch us next Tuesday. Follow us at notcryptobros.xyz. Follow us and like and subscribe on YouTube. Share with a friend. And if nothing more, we'll see you next Tuesday. Have